Breaking right now, an extraordinary media revolution in the UK as Katie Hopkins, the most cancelled woman in the country, claims the top spot in terms of where ordinary people are now consuming their news. So Katie posted about this, saying, appointment viewing, batshit bonkers Britain. I am banned by all media channels and outlets, including GB News. And yet BBB is the most watched news source in the UK. And it's because, I guess, of her outspoken delivery. And you know I like that. Watch.
Breaking news, not quite in batshit bonkers Britain, where Five Guys, the burger chain, has decided that it will pull sausages and bacon and alcohol in order to be halal compliant. This will only happen in majority Muslim areas, which include London, Birmingham, Bradford, Leicester, Luton, Dewsbury, Batley, Spurn, Newcastle, in fact most cities of the UK. Actually only 2 of the Five Guys are Muslim, but they vote Labour, so they get a majority share, and also the other 3 Five Guys don't want to be called Islamophobic. In other news, Maddie McCann's parents have been stalked by a woman claiming to be their missing daughter, Maddie McCann. She's now been arrested and charged. But you know, Maddie McCann's own father knows it can't possibly be Maddie because Maddie was murdered. Anyway, finally, Trump is going to accept a visit from Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer is about as relevant right now as Betamax. And secondly, because Trump knows where Keir Starmer has been. That's it. That's it, bonkers Britain.
Okay, and so look. She does it with a really big dose of comedy. And some people will say it's crude, some people will say it's rude, others love it. But what's absolutely fascinating to me is that there is this media revolution happening in the country. Katie Hopkins is a really influential voice, yet she remains completely banned by all of the mainstream media. So does this represent a fundamental change in terms of how people are consuming their news? Well, Alex Phillips, you're of course someone, I guess, who straddles, so to speak, the independent media and the mainstream media, but you do have your own Substack, That's What She Said, where you will cover issues that sometimes the mainstream media simply will not allow you to touch. And the growth of Katie Hopkins, despite the absolute best attempts of the British mainstream media, the establishment and the deep state to cancel her. I mean, remember, she had to leave the country for a bit. She lost everything. She lost her home. She lost her bank accounts. It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, actually, this doesn't surprise me at all. Most people don't consume their news via television anymore, via radio anymore. They're looking at it on their smartphones. They're using YouTube. They're using independent channels. They're getting their information from X, me included. And I would imagine I should be one of the last people to fall. Do you know what I mean? I'm sort of inherently sort of tied to legacy and heritage, and I'm a qualified journalist. So like still going down the old fashioned route of opening a newspaper. But the world is changing. And actually, it's interesting. I do straddle both camps. And what's really interesting to see is the legacy media camp, and I'm desperately trying to figure out how to harness the online game, basically. We have an email that comes around amongst all the presenters and the producers at Talk, which is basically the sort of league tables of who's doing the best on digital, who's got the most Facebook views, who's got the most TikTok views, who's got the most Twitter views, who's, whose program is being watched by the most people on YouTube. I mean, actually, this week I topped all the charts. Yay!
You go, girl.
But
not surprised.
What is interesting is now, look, Sky News are basically on the cusp of closing down. They're obsessed with how they get into this particular space. And what they're going to find difficult is the game is completely different. They don't run the game and they don't make up the rules on the World Wide Web. And so they're going to have to compete properly in an open marketplace and not have some sort of monopoly because they can afford to have, particular channel space on the television program guide and things like that. So it's a whole new world. We're kind of, it's interesting. Katie Hopkins says, oh yes, Keir Starmer, he's as relevant as Betamax right now. If you remember, Dan, when we were sort of in our teens, when the sort of great change started happening, internet and all the rest of it, one year it was like, right, no more cassettes, it's all going to be about CDs. Then after it's like, right, no more CDs, it's all about MP3 players. And then you had iPods, and then next thing is like, no, none of that anymore, it's now iPhones. And everything changed so quickly that the thing that was the next big thing wasn't the next big thing anymore. And I think we're now living in an era like that when it comes to how we consume news. I'm not sure what the next big thing is going to be, in what format and in what style. But do you know what? When it comes to the legacy media, they're really dragging their heels, because for the first time, they don't know and they don't get to control it.
Oh, indeed. And if you look at the numbers for the legacy media on the new media platforms, no one wants to watch them. No one's watching Channel 4 or the British Bashing Corporation or Woke ITV or Sly News on YouTube. They rely, and they have previously relied, on their control almost of the distribution network, which is changing. Now, the former Prime Minister Liz Truss made an interesting announcement about this at CPAC last week as well. It sounds like she wants a taste of the Katie Hopkins action too. Watch.
We have seen what independent media has done for the United States, and we want some of that. That's why we are going to be establishing a new free speech media network in conjunction with our American allies, including the great people here at CPAC. It will be uncensorable and uncancelable. It will take on the British.
And she says it will take on the British Bashing Corporation. I think that's a great idea. I think it's a great idea because I think what you saw from Liz Truss's prime ministership is that it was the mainstream media that worked in conjunction with the deep state to bring her down. Same thing, Alex, for Boris Johnson. And it's the same thing now in terms of them all ganging up to try and stop Nigel Farage, although I think that's going to be a much more difficult prospect.
Yeah, and you know, the chatter on this has gone out of control, particularly in America. It's caught the attention of Elon Musk. It's caught the attention of Donald Trump. My understanding is, I know some people connected to this, and my understanding is they're extremely excited. Since that announcement's been made, things have got very, very hot, basically. And so good luck to her, I say, because I think we desperately need something like that in this country. You know, America already has stuff like the Daily Wire, Real America's Voice. It's got these stables of talent with these sort of massive influencers like Charlie Kirk that have been established for quite a long time now. But we haven't really got something like that in the UK. At the moment, we've got amazing talent. I wouldn't say as much as America, actually. You're really a leading light, can I just say, Dan? But what we don't have is anything where it consolidates all the sensible, good, strong commentators so everyone has access to this. And so I think it's a very exciting prospect. I wish her all the best with that.
Yeah, a lot of people say to me, Dan, what I would love is for a whole load of you to come together in some way, because it is difficult when you're asking everyone to pay the £5 a month. I get it, because obviously we all want to be able to keep going without the control of billionaires who completely take away your free speech. And there are major developments happening at mainstream broadcasters, including GB News, by the way, which is going to crack down even further on the free speech at a channel like that, which I'll come to in the days and weeks ahead. So it is that difficult toss-up, I guess, Alex, because certainly for me, there has been a great liberation in no longer having a boss, no longer being answerable to someone who's trying to censor what I say, no longer having to fight in terms of what topics I cover. So I love the independent model, but I guess there has to be some way to support people in order to have the balls to go and do this. Because, you know, you'd put a lot on the line. There's a lot of big people who want to take you out, who want to sue you, all of that type of thing. And you've got no protection in a world like this. But first, the reason you're watching this show is because you know that these days it's almost impossible to trust the mainstream media or the so-called fact-checkers who claim to patrol social media. And that's for a very good reason, given the Brexit debate, COVID debacle, demonization of Donald Trump, describing Reform UK as dangerous. You get it right. But I have the solution. Today's sponsor, Ground News, was created by a former NASA engineer to provide you with the only safe way to consume the headlines. So go to ground.news/outspoken to check it out for yourself. But let me show you this incredible website and app in action. So let's take the recent game-changing speech by the US Vice President J.D. Vance to the Munich Security Conference, where he just tore into the European governments including ours here in the UK, for the despicable retraction of free speech. And what you can see very clearly on Ground News, which collates the 361 sources in one place, is instantly how the story is being covered, broken down by whether the media leans to the left or the right. This is illustrated by Ground News' brilliant bias distribution service. If you scroll down, you can see every article about this topic broken down by the political position and ownership of the publication. So in this case, it shows quite clearly that Newsmax and GB News gave fair and accurate coverage focused on how finally JD Vance had the guts to point out uncomfortable truths to European leaders. But by stark contrast, the left-wing Huffington Post claimed the speech left all of Europe aghast, while the Independent missed the lead altogether to focus on Vance's joke about Elon Musk, which they claimed bombed. It didn't, by the way. What's more, though, Ground News actually gets to know you personally, providing you with the news stories you're interested in while also analysing your own biases. So my favourite feature is that it comes up with potential blind spots that you might not be hearing about because of the corruption of the MSM. So look, I know you love the news. That's why you're watching Outspoken. But like me, you don't trust the legacy media. What Ground News does is give you the tools to understand the truth about what is going on in the world. This is the only way I read the news now. It allows you to see through media bias and manipulative narratives without needing to rely on the MSM to define the truth for you. So go to ground.news/outspoken to check it out. And guess what? Subscribe through my link today and you'll get 40% off the Vantage plan, which is what I use for unlimited access. Ground News is subscriber funded and supporting my sponsors also supports my work. So for less than a Netflix subscription, you can get all the world's news in one place and think for yourself. It's been a game changer for a news junkie like me. That's ground.news/outspoken. But now back to the show.
Yeah, and just imagine actually if you can continue to be your own boss, to continue to have free speech, continue to have your brand, but have all the protections you're talking about, and actually have a load of people in the same stable that, you know, you're not having to do, you know, 7 programs a day. People can tune in for lots of content, you included, and every, you know, they always say a rising tide, you know, lifts all ships, and it's so true. What you'll find is, you know, when people come together, I kind of consider the proposition, I would imagine, a bit like, you know, back in the day you had department stores on the high street. Yes, some still exist, but the high street's kind of dead. But you wouldn't necessarily have to go to Karen Millen down there and Oasis up there and Coast there. You'd just go to House of Fraser, or you'd go to John Lewis, and you get to buy all the different stuff. And you might have popped in for a pair of knickers and you walk back out having, you know, bought all your Christmas presents and the new dress that was in the sale and some pots and pans and all the rest of it. So actually bringing a load of stuff together under one roof is a very, very canny proposition, I think, that would be, I think I mean, as I said, I know some people who are potentially working on this right now and looking at their financial model as well. It's very exciting, let's just say. I think this is going to become big. And I know one thing, Dan, I know that they think you're very, very, very important.
Well, bless them, bless them. And look, I want to say congratulations to Katie Hopkins too, because she was brutally cancelled. It was a cancellation, actually, that should shame a lot of people in the mainstream media and in the establishment. And to just say, you know what, I care about this country too much, I'm not going away, is quite something. That's not to say, Alex, that I think Alex is right on, that I think Katie is right on everything, but it's not the point. She absolutely has a voice. And the brilliant thing is now with her iPhone, she just breaks through that barrier. And I also think it's really important just to show what Katie is also doing in terms of the Tommy Robinson situation at the moment, because over the weekend she did post on X saying, "My honest letter to the prison governor, the response, this is how the British state treats its own." And it was very, very fascinating just to dig in a little bit into what she wrote to Nicola Marfleet, the governor of HMP Woodhill. I'll take you through just the key parts of this. She says, "Of course I will sign any NDA or confidentiality paperwork in advance if required, and a brief view of my social media feed will demonstrate that my efforts online are about pulling people together and giving people Hope, and she says she'd have a conversation, she's available, she gives her personal number, and then Nicola Marfleet simply comes back to say, based on security information indicating your visit may be used for journalistic purposes, your visit has not been approved. And I think what's so bad about that, Alex, is that Katie had said it's absolutely not for journalistic purposes. I will sign your NDA.
Yeah, I know. I mean, look, they're really trying to play a cat and mouse game with themselves at the moment over all of this. They know they're getting a lot of heat for Tommy Robinson being incarcerated, the nature of that incarceration, his visitation rights, access to food, solitary confinement, and all the rest of it. And so they're worried that anybody now will come back and, say, I saw him and this is what happened, with or without an NDA, which largely are very hard to enforce, frankly speaking. But the big question is, what it suggests to me is, what on earth are they going to do when he is released? Because they can't control him then.
Because there's only... Yeah, there's only lasts so long. But we know, Alex, the crackdown on free speech is just becoming more and more insane by the day. The Mail on Sunday front page, as Winston Marshall put it, actually said Starmer's Britain is the joke of the West. And this is, of course, because the police turned up at the house of a grandmother who had simply said something like pretty mundane and anodyne about the councillor that was caught up in those leaked WhatsApp messages, effectively said, oh, they should resign. And the police turned up at her house. It's like, what the hell?
Yeah, but you know what? It is a joke. We all find it funny. Ha ha, isn't this ridiculous? They didn't actually press charges. But that woman's turned around and said she's been harrowed by this. She now is in fear of what she can post on social media. What the hell is going on? It's a joke because we still don't believe it's happening in our country. We find it funny because it's so absurd that this could be taking place on our streets in the United Kingdom. We find it funny because we're not the ones living in fear. We find it funny because reality is still yet to hit us between the eyes, that actually all of us now are living in a prison, and it's happened so incrementally, so stealthily, most of us don't realize it. But I just want to say to all of your viewers right now, do you second think anytime you want to make a joke, make a comment, ask your taxi driver where he might be from? Is this the right terminology I should be using about this race or that ethnicity or this religion? Am I allowed to have that thought? Am I allowed or permitted to be concerned about, say, the rise of Islam, or does that make me a monster? Can I talk to somebody about that? Do I have to be careful of the words I use on social media? If you said yes to any one of those things, not all of them, but just one, and even just a slight yes, then guess what? That's you living in a prison. That is you already being part of an authoritarian state. And it's a bit like the changes of the season.
We are there.
It happens incrementally, and exactly, suddenly you just go, right, we are there.
And the poor babies, though, at the Metropolitan Police decided to post on X, we're aware of significant social media commentary. Some of the comments are personal and hurtful. This is unacceptable. Okay, it might be unacceptable, but unless it's against the law, just stay out of it. Just stay out of it, because all your job is to stop people breaking the law. That is it. That is it. Yes, sometimes people are going to be offensive. Sometimes people are going to be cruel with you. That is the price we pay for living in a free society. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source, and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.